Welcome to If Prices Could Talk, the podcast where we dive into the art and science of pricing, sales, and negotiation. I'm your host, Tracy Dent. Join me as we explore strategies and current events shaping the future of pricing power in B2B, featuring insights from industry leaders and subject matter experts. Let's jump into today's conversation. The concept for the episode is why price changes fail. We'll see if I rename it once we get through all of our kind of discussions that we laid out. But I think there's so much to talk through. First of all, for people listening and not watching, Travis and Jeet are both on with me. Jeet is our Chief Strategy Officer, and Travis, we've been doing so much work on implementation. Travis is our Master Facilitator for negotiations. So there's so many things to talk about. It's like once the price point has been decided on, what are all the other things that need to fall into place to actually execute a price change, and where do things kind of fall off the rails? So that was the idea for this episode.
This is a conversation that is worth at least once a year having a chat about with what we're seeing with our clients, because I think there's this humanistic element to it. It's not just strategy and mathematics and negotiation tactics. It's not that. It is that, but it goes beyond that because you're dealing with human to human conversation and you're dealing with difficult conversations and all this thing, and which takes time and effort and practice. And so I think every year it creates unique challenges because of us being humans and what we need to do.
I think a good opening for the conversation is how complicated the emotions of implementation are.
Yeah.
Because there's
Internally
understanding
and externally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's understanding the correct, or the art and science of finding the right price point, but then you open up this can of worms when you actually start having the conversations and changing the internal processes and confronting a lot of these scary moments, internal and external, when you're making the actual, on the ground decisions for it. So I think that's a good entry point for all of what we get into.
It's not just about price points, but it's really about revenue generation and growth. And most organizations see that as a team effort. But when they look at price points, they put all of that often on the sales team and say, hey, sales team, here's the price points, go out and get it. And when we work with sales teams, I think where we see a lot of confidence issues is when they're tasked with getting price points and the customer comes back to them with service issues, operational issues, product issues, all these things that are outside of the sales guy's control, but now he's responsible for those things in the price negotiation. And so this is where it starts to come full circle. If for the sales guy to have confidence to be able to sell at whatever price point is decided, he needs to know that once that's done, because his reputation is on the line, that when they come back around and they are actually delivering on the promises that are made, that the organization will be able to do that.
It's always interesting to me because when we do projects with our clients, we always start with understanding the value. You start with understanding the value that your clients create for their customers. And in that process, we have an internal look of that, so we talk to SMEs, including salespeople. And then we have an external look where we do the market research and we talk to the customers. And in going through that process, I think everybody kind of nods their head and goes, yes, we create value for our customers, and this is how we're unique from our competitors. This is how we have differential value, and here's where we have purely just use value, but it's valuable nonetheless. It's good. It's positive in our clients or in our customers' environment. So everybody nods their head. I think it always becomes difficult because I want to separate out the conversations, because there's one part of the conversation that Travis rightfully pointed out is they get a lot of pushback because customers get, oh, you want me to pay more? If you want me to pay more, let me tell you all the problems you have, right? So there's definitely one bucket that's there. That I would also say is shame on the pricing project and the people for not recognizing that earlier and arming your sales people properly for that pushback, right? But let's put that aside for a second. I think there's another bucket of people that just don't want to have a difficult conversation. They just don't want to have a conversation. They don't want to have a conversation about change. They don't want to go up to a customer then and just have this conversation that says, hey, we're going to make a change to your price and here's why, and here's how we're going to bridge you from where you are today. that's where the salespeople stand up. They don't stand up throughout the process of understanding value. They nod their heads and say, yeah, that's great, that's great. But when it's like, okay, now we've done the value work, here's all the value to justify this price point, that's when the salespeople go, I don't want to have this conversation. They're not going to believe in my value. And it boils down to that belief in the value. And I think that process of understanding the value, there needs to be a parallel path of making people believe in that value. Because if you can't do that parallel, then it becomes an extra step that you have to, do, and a mountain you have to climb before implementation can happen. And that to me is usually, we see that often, just that behavioral component of it.
I think a lot of the disbelief in that value is because a lot of companies, like you said, you ask them internally where their value is, and they think internally about what they're doing, but they don't always take the time to go out and get customer perspective. So then when they go to push it to the customer, they feel like, oh, my customer's not going to buy into this, or they don't understand this, or they don't believe it, because it doesn't reflect what the customer's words are, right? That customer conversation. I know that when we work and do this value work, and we actually start connecting with the customers, one of the things that early on in kind of my consultative years, when we would go out and do this, and we would come back with value chains, one of the things that all the sales guys wanted and that they thought was the most important thing to them were quotes from the conversations that we had. And that was just like this huge eye opener to me that, oh, wait, you didn't know this? Like, you haven't already heard this from your customers? Because they spend so much time telling their customers where the value is that they don't take the time to listen to their customers about how they're actually perceiving the value and what they're actually getting out of it. So when we would come up with just lists of quotes from their customers saying, we love this, or this helps us accomplish X. They're like, really? They said that? That's awesome. They loved that. And that gave them a lot more confidence to go out and be able to bring that up in the conversations when defending a price, or just getting the prices that are established within an organization, and avoid the heavy discounting that we also often see.
Let's talk about discounting a little bit, because I think that's another thing that we've talked about a lot, Travis, with a lot of your sessions when you're working with people in the commodity frame. Can you talk about some of the biggest things that cause discounting? And then I think we should get into how do you sort of reverse that, work towards being more aligned with value. But let's talk about some of the kind of the root issues.
Yeah, well, it's funny that we're talking about price increases, and I think that's what a lot of people are trying to accomplish to get that growth. But they're connected so deeply, because you can raise your price to whatever you want if you don't have a strong discounting governance system. It doesn't matter. Like, you can raise the price to whatever you want, and it's just going to get discounted back down depending on how hard the customers push. And that's what we see when people go out with a price increase. The customer's first response is, I don't want to pay that. I haven't paid that in the past. I don't know why I need to pay that going forward. So I'm going to work my way through the organization until I find the person that's going to approve that discount for me. And if it's not the sales guy, it's the sales guy's manager. And if it's not the sales guy's manager, it's this guy. And that's where, again, it goes right back to how we started this conversation about this organizational alignment. If you don't have that, that's when it all starts to fall apart. And the sales guys, if he knows that, hey, I'm gonna go out with this price increase, and the minute they push back, they're gonna get a hold of my manager or my boss or the executive, and he's gonna approve the discount, then I'm gonna look like a fool, right? They're gonna look at me and say, this guy doesn't know, he doesn't have any authority, he can't approve anybody. We'll listen to him for lip service, but when it comes to negotiating, we're not going to do anything until we get somebody higher leveled in the room. And that's where you really got to have the whole board, the whole organization online with this, with any pricing structure that you have, but especially when you're doing a price increase, because that message is different. Kind of to Jeet's point, why do they lack that confidence? Because they're like, hey, I'm going out, I'm going to be the face of the company. Is everyone going to hold the line on this? Is everyone going to help me out on this? Or is somebody going to bail? Because the minute somebody bails, then they feel like, that's me. That's like, I'm the face of this, and I'm the one that's going to look bad. And I'm never going to recover from that. They're never going to be able to come back and say, well, it didn't work last time, but this time we're going to do it. And so you've got to be able to have your team together. And it's not just I'm kind of hacking on leadership because those are the ones that have the authority to come in and give those deeper discounts. But it includes, the operations and the marketing and all these people. If the messages aren't consistent, the customer will pick up on that and they will recognize that, and then they will find the weakest link and they will cling to that until they get their discount.
Yeah, I totally agree. If I look back at the biggest failures from a price implementation, it usually is organization alignment. There's alignment and then there's lack of uh, preparation. Those are the two things. And I would put the third thing being lack of tool sets offered to the sales team to go protect that price. Those are the three things, lack of alignment for sure. Executives are notorious for trying to look like they are the winners. And so they can go close a deal with their buddy and completely undermine what the poor sales rep was trying to do. We see that quite a bit. And there's a lot of, like Travis correctly pointed out, there's tremendous amount of sort of lack of trust that builds internally that's there. And then you're also training the customer to go, hey, they can find the soft spot pretty fast and get what they need. So they're going to ignore any other future changes that you need them to go through. So I think the alignment is definitely there. I think there's a lack of preparation. I'm always surprised where I'm like, okay, you anticipated that pushback, kind of like what Travis was saying about the first part, first part of this conversation. So you know what the major pushbacks will be by the different customers. So why didn't you prepare for it? Why don't you have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, a governance approach, a escalation path? Do you go physically see a customer? Do you do this via email, or is it something done in person? Like all of these things, like I'm always like shocked of the lack of like preparation. It's almost like things are done in silos and kind of pushed over the fence and it's like now it's your problem, not mine. I calculated the price point. Now, sales, it's your problem, which is a
Yep.
terrible way to do it, and the preparation's not there. And then lastly, I think that's a tool set. It's a constant conversation that we have, which is, when we ask our clients, when was the last time you'd have made a price change? How did it go? How did you tool your sales team to go out there and take that price to market? And that's usually another failure point for them, where they're like, what do you mean? And it's like, well, if a salesperson doesn't have other packages, services, service levels, then they only have price to change. So if they get a lot of pushback, if the only lever they have is a change in price, then of course they're going to use that lever because they don't want to lose that deal. So what other things did you give them so they can protect that price out in the market? And they're typically that's a very, very low rated sort of area for them.
Yeah.
I feel like these things get easier the more frequently the changes happen, right? Like some of these clients that we've worked with recently, it's just like it's been a long time since they've done a price change. So you get these things in motion, and then all of a sudden, you've got people talking to each other in different ways. But over time, like especially when you look at different departments, people just get into like, here's my piece of it, and then you hand it to the next person. And then when you look from the client perspective in, you've got all these different things that sort of aren't one experience of the company.
Here's the really interesting thing, I think, in my opinion, in your kind of unbundling an entire another discussion, and that is looking at this from the other side of the coin, which is from the customer's perspective, right? Why are they pushing back so hard? And to your point, I think one of the things that they see is we see that the customers that really haggle the price the most, when we get in and look at the seller or the customer's data, their price points are all over the place, right? That there's not this really hard curve, right? So on the other extreme, you go to the grocery store, you look at the varying price of milk or eggs or whatever. Nobody negotiates this. Nobody haggles this because everybody knows the price they're going to pay. There's no point in doing it. But what that does is it creates a lot of confidence in the consumer that I'm not overpaying for these products. I've got the list here. I can see what my options are, and I know that every person coming in is going to be paying the same thing. And that gives me as a consumer a lot of confidence. When there is this inconsistency within an organization, or When their prices haven't changed in a long time, what that really means is your legacy, your old customers are paying a very different rate than your new customers because things have been added, prices have gone up, but these guys haven't changed. And so the prices are all over the place. The customer knows that the consumer knows that the prices are all over the place, and they are concerned if I don't push hard, if I don't negotiate for every dime, then I'm going to be paying more than everybody else. They're going to have a competitive advantage over me if it's a commodity or a highly consumable good. Or, hey, I just need to know that the price can get down there. So I'm going to learn and I'm going to work hard to do that. When you eliminate that, and when you get your whole team on board with, hey, this is our price, this is why, we're all working to deliver at that level, and they get that consistent message, regardless of who they talk to within the organization, boy, that goes a long way in improving consumer confidence that this is the price that everybody's getting, and we're all paying this for a reason. And it really reduces the negotiation or the hard negotiation on that price.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there is, and Tracy, I was going to bring up, we recently did a training with a bunch of CEOs at a private equity firm, and we had a guest speaker that came in who was an ex-CEO of one of the portcos, and he talked about how he had to train the customers to expect price changes. And because he was trying to get them up to that value alignment. So he was like every year would do a price change. There is definitely, to your point, Tracy, that with the question that you're asking is, the customers train us and we train the customers. So it's important to have these muscles be something that's repeatable, that's consistent, that's transparent. To Travis's point, you have to have that because you're building that muscle at that point. If you don't do any price changes, and all of a sudden, 15 years later, you do a price change, people are going to be like, "What the heck is this?" And there's also another, like emotionally, there's another component of it. A lot of people might just drop out of your customer base because they may say you're not improving. So there is this sort of mentality of price quality. So if you haven't changed your price in 15 years, that might not be a good signal you're sending to the market. That might be a signal that you haven't evolved. Maybe your competitors have. Maybe people go, hey, they haven't changed at all, and we need to move to some other company. So there's this sort of weirdness that's always been there with pricing, that transparency, the consistency, the behavior change. It also equals like that perception of value that's out there. And I love Travis's example of the grocery store. One of the things I believe in grocery stores and other public environments is, that if I walk up and grab that carton of eggs and Travis comes right behind me, Travis and I are going to pay the same price. And there is a comfort level that says I'm not getting taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And that brings comfort to people. So that transparency and consistency, like Travis was saying, I do think is extremely important for the consumer, be it a B2B environment or B2C environment. We're all looking like, hey, I don't want to be the fool that pays double the price. And if you make it so complex that I doubt that, then I'm going to negotiate harder because I don't want to be that fool. So there's that sort of, comfort level that gets created by having that transparency and that consistency. And there are tricks that we obviously talk about to give the customer in a B2B environment that same feeling, but that feeling is extremely important. By the way, it's interesting to me, some of the grocery stores have started doing apps. So if you have the app, you have
Yeah.
access to coupons that otherwise you wouldn't have.
Right.
So now people are not spending the same amount of money. And now they started putting tags on the tags. So let's say a carton of eggs is $6 or $7. They'll put 50 cents off if you have the app, or whatever your sale price is if you have the app. And then people are struggling to get on the app and then how to use the app. There's like all this other stuff, but there is now becoming a little bit of a price discrepancy. So that sort of trust is not there. I choose not to download the app because I don't want to deal with it. My time that I need to spend to look for those sale items and to coordinate my buying is too much time for me. I have much more value in my time, and I'm okay spending that extra 25 cents, 50 cents for that carton of eggs if I can get in and get out quickly without having all these other things bogging me down. So all of a sudden, I become a value buyer knowing my time is what I really, really appreciate in that process.
But you've hit on like the really important pieces, Jeet. First of all, there's transparency there, right?
Yeah.
So the consumer understands what the difference is, right? Even in eggs, whatever, right? But commercially speaking, it's the same thing. It's that transparency. And then sometimes as sellers, we just assume that they're going to push for that lower price if they see that lower price out there. But now we can explain to them, well, you can get that lower price, but it comes at a personal investment cost. It comes at a cost. This is the best solution for you, and the customer can then make the decision. You're right. I am willing to pay more to get XYZ. They understand what they're
Yeah.
getting, and we surprise ourselves, from a seller's perspective, how often our customers are going to choose the mid and even high level packages because we haven't talked to them about how they get value out of it.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
for a lot of times it's like, hey, I just don't want to think about it. I don't want to worry about it. And so if you're going to do that for me, just like this, I don't want to take the time to hassle with this app. Then all of a sudden they're willing to pay for it. And now the customer justifies their own expense. We don't have to justify it,
That's
but
right.
it's because of the clarity and because of the consumer confidence.
Yeah, and I will say, and that is another trick to the price changes, which is giving the customer the ability to choose. If they
Mhm.
feel like they have a choice, then your ability to push that change through into the customer becomes easier. Oftentimes, and Tracy, we put that sort of list of all the bad price changes that we've seen in our, publicly. And there's some people that choose to do, here's the price change, take it or leave it. I think that causes more churn. But you can do the same thing by saying, hey, you can have the same price point as you do today, but you're going to have a reduced service level. And if you want a higher service level, here's your new price point. Even doing something as simple as that gives me the choice to stay at the same rate or go up in rate. And then what is the equivalent value that I get from it? That makes me feel like I'm more in power for what's about to happen. And my willingness to pay goes a little bit higher, or another way to say it is my price sensitivity comes, down a little bit from where it was before. I think the choice part is very, very important here.
So from a metric perspective, here's something else I'll throw out there. Again, a lot of times when we do price increases or price implementations, um, we go out there and we start getting numbers of, hey, people are taking this lower price point. They're taking this lower price point. We're losing revenue. Our customers aren't spending as much with us. And we should expect that to happen. And that shouldn't cause us to have huge red flags. It is something that we want to watch. It's something we want to pay attention to. But what we often see is that they do that because they don't understand the value. Shame on us, we haven't communicated that. But they very quickly come back up. They're like, oh yeah, I'll take this other option. I'm going to take the cost-effective option. And they're like, wow, that actually takes a lot of more work for me to manage, right? And so I actually do appreciate that value. I didn't realize it before. It's kind of like that you don't know what you have until it's gone perspective. And they start coming back. And then all of a sudden that revenue comes back and even more because now they're more invested in you. Every company that we've worked with has examples of price increases or changes that have caused people to leave. And within, the next turn of that contract or whatever, they're right back. And now a much more loyal customer than they were before because they recognize the value that they have at risk or to lose if they don't work with you.
I did an implementation project many years ago, and it's a fairly large distribution company, and we did service levels. And I had the customer choose which service level they wanted. We had a low one, which was basically, hey, you get nothing. You just go to the website and order your goods, basically. And then you get a mid level and you get a high level where you get a dedicated rep. Because we had done the study that said dedicated reps were very highly valued. And so this was a high transaction environment, very lot of revenues. And so we had this thing where we said, if you go to the low level, we'll give you so many basis point discount. And if your regular price is right in the middle, and then we'll add a few basis points for the high service, package. And we modeled it out and we thought it was going to be a nice normal distribution that we were going to get. And when we first rolled it out, it's like 80-90% of the people chose the lower level. We were like, oh crap. And we were so nervous. And it took about, I would say, 7 to 8 months And then we started seeing, because the volumes were so high, people started feeling that low level of service. And you could see, like, I wish I had done, nowadays you can do the visualization that's
Yeah,
over
yeah,
time. Like, I wish I had done that because you can see the people kind of coming into the mid bucket. Then you start moving, the migration started happening to the high. I would say in about 12 to 18 months it took for it to kind of all settle down, because some people went to the high and they came back to the mid level also, right?
yeah,
And it took about 12 to 18 months. And then we did get our normal distribution curve because people were testing it out. And it was, we should have taken that into account, that people sometimes may go, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to talk about it. Give me the lowest price. And, you're attracted to the low price, and you have to be comfortable, to your point, Travis, that, okay, you can have it with this low service, but let's have you experience it for a little bit and see if you really, really like it. And then people go, oh no, I really don't like this at all. I'm moving.
yeah.
Yeah, there's so many layers to this, right? Because then there's also like the idea of kind of how do you execute from a timing perspective. For some
Mm.
companies, it may be an option to sort of roll things out all at once. Most companies in B2B, it's not quite like that, especially when you haven't done it for a long time. You don't want to just like, like fire off a big price change and then you've got to deal with all the incoming stuff. You're taking too many risks in different places. So I think it'd be good to talk about that a little bit too, and like kind of throttling, okay, we're going to start with a small group of clients. Here's what we want to learn from that. They're lower risk. And then we can move to kind of higher risk clients so that you're learning as you go. And I think that's a big part of these B2B changes.
We usually do things in four buckets, right? We can have nuances within the four. It could be more or less. And like you said, Tracy, there's some companies that want to do it big bang. Their industry kind of dictates it sometimes, and that's okay, whatever it is. But typically we do four boxes, and the 2x2 we use is high risk, low risk of churn, and then revenue, high revenue, low revenue, and we kind of set it up that way. So we attack the smaller guys with the lowest risk first, so we can learn. The sales reps can learn. They can go out and protect the price. They see what the pushbacks are. They learn from it. We kind of get better, and we get better as we go into the second tranche, third, and then the big accounts with high risk are the last ones where we've got enough reps under our belt that we know that we can go in there and protect it properly, anticipate the questions, and be ready with the answers, basically. And that works fairly well. What I don't like in that environment is it gives people excuses to not go from bucket one to bucket two. It gives
Like the
people
door is still a little bit open to kind of go back
yes,
and change your mind.
yes, it's like, oh, we're not really ready. Let's push
Mhm.
this out a little bit. We're
Yeah.
not ready to go to the second bucket. As soon as you allow people, you give them that little crack that says, okay, we're going to push out that second bucket, that becomes a crutch. And all of a sudden, becomes a 4-year rollout rather than a 1 year or year and a half or 2 years, whatever is the right timeline for you. So I think in that implementation requires a level of metric management that says this is enough, we're moving, and it takes a little bit of a top-down approach that says that's enough. You've had enough reps. Let's go. Because we as you go from bucket one to four, every conversation becomes more important and more difficult. So it's easy for people to go, whoa, 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 I'm getting nervous. Let's push this out to next quarter. Let's move. No, no, no. We're not doing that well this quarter. Let's focus on sales. We'll push this out a little bit more. There's plethora of excuses why you shouldn't do something. And we need somebody in there as an advocate that basically pulls these people through the four boxes. And that's, to me, that timing becomes extremely important from that perspective to hold ourselves accountable.
Yeah, I was going to add, it's interesting when you work with organizations. Obviously, we often start off with the analytics, right? We look at the numbers and we start to find these trends, the common trends that we all know about, like that 80/20, where 80% of your margin is from 20% of your customers. And we always find this long trailing list of customers that actually cost you money or that are not adding to your margin growth. And so, then you get the analysts that look at this and say, well, all of this is costing you. These accounts cost you. You should fire them today. You fire them today. But the reality is like, oh my gosh, that's really scary. I don't want to fire customers. That there is a revenue number on there, just not a margin number on there. So they get really anxious. And so that's kind of where we talk about this test and learn phase, especially early on, and people get nervous about losing these. But if we can shift the mindset to, hey, these guys are fired anyway, right? Like these guys are costing you money. The mindset is not I'm going to get you a price increase. It's like you're kind of we're going to cut you, but I'm going to give you these options and give you an opportunity to stay with us and continue to work with us. And it's not that that's how we're going to approach it. This is not the marketing communication that I'm recommending, Tracy. I know that you would probably cringing a bit at that, but it is that it's the mindset of um, I'm okay with the no. Right? I'm okay with a loss because that's what we need to get to. If we're not okay with losing anything, then we're always going to be taken for what the customer is willing to or thinks that we're worth or wants to give us, right? So we need to be willing to lose some accounts. And these are the best ones for us to practice on to build that confidence, not to save everybody, but to understand, am I communicating this right? Did they leave because they don't have the revenue for it? Because this is really going to be hard for them, or because they don't understand the value? Are they going to leave and then come back? That's the biggest disservice that we can do to our customers because if they leave and come back, it means that we didn't do a good job of helping them understand all the problems that we're solving for them.
Yeah.
You know, it's satisfying for me to hear leaders this past year and a half, talk about their renewal rate is too high or their churn rate is too low. You know, so they're kind of getting to that point and understanding that, hey, I should not have 100% renewal. Something's not right. I could push that bit, you know. And so it's been really refreshing to see leaders come to us and use that as a problem, an indicator that there may be a problem that's out there, that they're not value aligned, you know, with their prices. Because before we used to have leaders come in as a badge of honor that says, hey, I have 100% renewal rate. I'm very customer centric. It's 100%. And it's like, I don't know if you want to be in that bucket. And now, you know, in the last year and a half, it's just, I don't know what it is. Maybe people are much more used to that metric or they understand it. Or, you know, frankly, sometimes PE companies, they push you that says, hey, 100% means you've got room. So keep pushing on the price.
Mhm.
Maybe that's a little bit of that also, but it's been nice to see people be better about that churn rate.
I think we're getting a lot more metrics now, and maybe this is
That's
moving
true
into
too.
this. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It surprises me sometimes these multi-million, multi-billion dollar organizations that we work with, and we're asking them for data, and it's not clean, right? Like they
Yeah.
don't have a really good grasp on revenue versus margin or what are their costs, and hopefully AI can really help us sort that out.
Let's do a few lightning round for early test and learn stories. Because
Mm.
there's so many that have come up, yeah, like in our sessions with some of these CEOs and just some of these recent projects where you kind of section off that first test group in the categories of changes, kind of in how you bucket the clients. And then what are the things that have stood out in those? Like I was thinking about one of the guys that was talking to us about their communications. He's like, when we first started, the letters were so long. We would explain, and then there's this reason, and here's why we have to do this, and we're sorry, and then here's what we're gonna do to make it easier for you. And it's like this long thing. And he's like, the more we spoke with people, the more that we were like, just tell them what we're doing and where we're heading and make it as brief as possible. And it's less weird. It's actually so weird when you have to explain all of the things, but sometimes it's hard to see that when you're just starting out. So anyway, I think those kinds of things are good to unpack too.
Yeah. I'll start with an example. One of the things, you know, we at one of the companies I was at, we used to do price increase letters. And when we did our price increase letters, it would be a formal legal like page and writing of things. And it would not do very well because, you know, a lot of customers, our customers would accept it, but then we would have like 30-40% that would be like very much against it. And we realized after a few rounds of this that when you do that legal sort of writing of notes, you know, to talk about price changes, it kind of makes it more formal than it needs to be. It's almost like you're going overboard. And when people see the legal structure of a note, people get really nervous that there's something
Mhm.
else going on. The relationship aspect of your customer versus vendor disappears because they're getting a legal notice. And that almost, it frightens relationship buyers. We talk about different buyers and it just scares people unintentionally, right? You're not meaning to do it. You're trying to be thorough as a client of ours. But what you're doing is you're triggering off these like price sensitivities,
Protection.
this
Yeah, yeah.
protectionist behavior, right? And
Yeah.
so what we ended up doing was we changed it. We changed our format. It was still the same messaging because we were trying to value align. We're trying to move services around. So we changed the letter to be softer, not so legal-y, and we wouldn't get to the legal portion until if you're on contract with us, then we'll get to the legal portion. This became more of a conversational piece. And we said, hey, our QBR is coming up. Let's talk about it in the QBR. Love to show you this, show you the new products that are coming in. And it became more conversational. And we went from like 40% pushback to like less than 10% pushback. It just all disappeared just for that. The way we communicated changed to being a little bit softer.
Yeah, I mean, so mine was similar, but not from a communication like written going out there, but how we talk to our customers, right? Like when these are coming out there, I think some of the quickest things that we start to learn is that one, we want to position it. We want to position it with the choices because that gives the customer the opportunity to say, "Hey, I'm not comfortable with this." Well, great, you've got option B. You're just going to miss these things from option A, and then let the customer talk, right? We try to sell, we try to push this on them, but letting the customer talk about how they're using it, what do they need, what are they trying to accomplish, and then they actually start to tease out, like they're asking you for more things, and it gives you kind of what your argument should be going forward as you start to have these conversations and implement pricing at any level, but especially when there's a price increase or a price change. That's when people are more sensitive. So that's one. I think, again, it's this organizational alignment. It's interesting that, and even recently, right, we start working with teams that are working on this, a price increase, and the sales guys are like, oh, I got to be the face of this, I got to do this, but all the sales coming in through other channels, people are like, hey, can we just do this? Yeah, let's do it. And the customers don't balk at it. They're not pushing back and like, oh, wow, I have a lot more confidence now. It's like, I feel better having this conversation with my customer, knowing that they see value in it that I might not see. Why don't you see it? Ask them. Talk to them. Let them talk about how they're using the product, how they're engaging with you. What is it that's most important to you? We're going into this price increase. We want to make sure we get you on the right product. What's the things that's most important to you? We want to make sure that's included in your solution. And a lot of times these customers upsell themselves because they start to think about what they need. Oh, we could help with that. We could help with that. So it creates a different dynamic in the conversation.
Tracy, one of the things that I remember back to is sometimes when in my past, when we've done these price changes, you assume that person you're talking to is the person you need to sell this change to. And oftentimes that's not the case.
Yeah.
That person is not who you need to sell it to. I mean, of course, they're part of the influencing group and you need to worry about them and make sure they understand it. But you need to help them sell it internally to their boss's boss, another, procurement, whoever, whatever it might be. And oftentimes when you're presenting the change at first, that person goes, oh my God, you're going to add like 3 weeks of work to my plate that I just don't have time for, right? They're nervous. They're going to look bad in front of their managers or peers or whatever. They feel like it's extra work. They're going to say no to you because they just don't want to go through the process, basically. So I think one of the questions we always have to ask is, what can we do to make that process of getting that up change approved for my customers' internal processes? What can I do to make it easier? What can I do? How do I present this offer? How do I present when they accept, how they accept, what choices they have? How do I make that process as easy for the person I'm speaking with because they need to take it and they need to go to their sort of internal processes, and we need to understand that. And oftentimes we find clients not doing that step and that becomes a hindrance without it needing to be one.
Yeah. Good. All right, maybe we pause there for this episode.
Yeah,
Good to stop
I
there.
think so.
Thank you both.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Okay.
All
Talk to
right,
you
see you
later.
soon.